still wake up smelling that river. It's not a clean smell like rain on hot asphalt or the salty air back home. It's a heavy smell, damp, cold, mixed with diesel fuel and the rot of old mud. It's been 80 years, give or take, and that black water still runs through the back of my mind every time I try to sleep. They called it the Rhine. To us, it was just the end of the world, or the beginning of it. I remember looking at it that night in March of 1945. It looked like oil sliding through the darkness, wide, fast, angry. We knew what was on the other side, the heart of it all, Germany, the place where the orders came from, where the madness started. And we knew that crossing it wasn't just about swimming or taking a boat ride. It was about breaking a door down that had been locked tight for years. People talk about the generals now. I read the books. My grandson brings them to me sometimes. They talk about strategy and supply lines and political maneuvering. They talk about Field Marshal Montgomery up north and General Patton, our general, down south. They talk about it like it was a chess game played in a warm room with brandy and cigars. But let me tell you, when you're 19 years old and your boots are soaked through and you're shivering so hard your teeth rattle, you don't care about chess. You don't care about headlines. You just care about the man next to you and you care about keeping your head down. But we knew something was happening. You could feel the electricity in the air. It was a different kind of tension. Usually, before a big push, there's a buildup. You see the trucks piling up for weeks. You see mountains of crates, ammunition, food, medical supplies. You see the artillery digging in, thousands of guns pointing the same way. That's how Montgomery did it. We heard the rumors. Up north, the British were staging a show. They were building a city of supplies. They were going to cross the Rhine with pomp and circumstance, with a bombardment that would shake the fillings out of your teeth. But we were with Patton. And with Patton, things didn't happen on a schedule. They happened when he said go. I remember the whisper going down the line. It wasn't an official briefing. It never was with us grunts. It was a nudge from the sergeant, a look in the lieutenant's eye. Pack it up, they said. We're moving. Not in a week, now, right now. We were tired. Lord, we were so tired. We had been chasing the Germans across France, through the snow, through the mud. We thought maybe, just maybe, we'd get a rest before the big river. But Patton didn't believe in rest. He believed in momentum. He believed that if you stopped, you died. Or worse, you let the enemy catch his breath. We heard later what the argument was. We heard that Montgomery had told Eisenhower, the big boss, that crossing the Rhine was impossible without major preparation. He told him it was reckless to try it on the fly. He said the German defenses were too strong, the current was too fast, and that rushing into it would be suicide. He wanted everything perfect. He wanted to guarantee success by waiting, by planning, by stockpiling. It makes sense on paper, I suppose. It's safe, it's logical, but war isn't logical. And sitting still in a foxhole while the enemy digs in on the other side, that never felt safe to me. It just felt like waiting to get hit. So there we were, moving in the dark. No headlights. Just the sound of engines growling low and thousands of boots shuffling on the road. We were heading to a place called Oppenheim. I didn't know the name then. It was just a spot on the map. The rumor was that we were going to steal the show. That Patton wanted to pee in the Rhine before Montgomery could launch his grand operation. It sounds petty, doesn't it? A rivalry between generals costing lives. But looking back, I don't think it was just ego. I think Patton knew something the others didn't. He knew that the Germans were broken. He knew they were disorganized. And he knew that if we waited for Montgomery's big parade, the Germans would have time to regroup. They would have time to aim their guns. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. We got to the riverbank and it was quiet. That was the thing that scared me the most. Silence in war is heavy. It presses on your ears. You expect noise. You expect chaos. But this was a stealth operation. No artillery preparation, no screaming. Just men moving boats. We were going to cross in these small assault boats, paddling like we were on a camping trip, except everyone had a rifle and a knot of fear in their stomach the size of a fist. I remember standing there, looking at the water. A buddy of mine, a kid from Ohio named Miller, whispered to me, "Henry, I can't swim." I looked at him. In the dark, his face was just a pale smudge. "Don't worry," I told him. "Just paddle. If we go in the water, the swimming won't matter much anyway with all this gear." I was trying to be funny. It wasn't funny. The water was cold enough to stop your heart. The order came. We piled into the boats. It wasn't a reckless charge. It was calculated. It was precise. That's what people forget about that night. They say Patton was a cowboy, but that crossing was a masterpiece of discipline. We pushed off. The sound of the paddles dipping into the water sounded like thunder to me, but it must have been quiet, because the other bank stayed dark. I kept waiting for the flares. I kept waiting for the machine guns to open up and turn the water into a frothing mess of blood and wood. That's what Montgomery said would happen. That's what he told Eisenhower. He said a hasty crossing would be a massacre. He said we needed air support, massive artillery, airborne drops. He said going without it was throwing lives away. But as we drifted closer to the German side, nothing happened. The silence held. We could hear the water lapping against the hull. We could hear the heavy breathing of the men around us. And then, the nose of the boat crunched into the mud on the east bank. We were there. We were in Germany. We scrambled out, boots sinking into the muck, rifles up, waiting for the ambush. But there was no ambush. There were a few shots, distant, confused. The Germans weren't ready. They weren't expecting us. They were looking north, watching Montgomery's massive buildup, waiting for the big show. They never thought anyone would be crazy enough to cross the Rhine without a bombardment. They never thought anyone would just walk across in the dark. I remember lying in the grass on that bank, wet up to my waist, shaking from the cold and the adrenaline. I looked back at the river. The engineers were already working. They were building a pontoon bridge. It was incredible to watch. In the dark, working by feel, they were lashing boats together, laying down steel treadways. Patton didn't just want a patrol across. He wanted an army. He wanted tanks. And he wanted them across before morning. That night, I realized something about war. Sometimes, caution is the most dangerous thing of all. If we had waited, if we had done it Montgomery's way, the Germans would have been in those bunkers. They would have had their machine guns zeroed in on the crossing points. We would have walked into a wall of fire. But because we moved fast, because we took the risk, we caught them with their pants down. I saw a German officer later that night, after we'd moved inland a bit and rounded up some prisoners. He looked bewildered. He kept looking at his watch and then at the river. He spoke a little English. He said to our lieutenant, "You are not supposed to be here yet." That stuck with me. We weren't supposed to be there. We were supposed to be waiting. We were supposed to be the diversion. But the feeling of being on that east bank wasn't triumph. It was vulnerability. We were a thin line of men in enemy territory with a big river behind us and a whole country of angry soldiers in front of us. If the Germans organized a counterattack right then, we would have been pushed back into the water. Miller, the kid who couldn't swim, he was digging a foxhole next to me. He was digging like a badger. "We made it, Henry," he said. "We're across." I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "Now we just have to stay here." The next 36 hours were a blur. The bridge went up. Tanks started rolling across. The noise was incredible then. The element of surprise was gone. The Germans woke up. They started throwing artillery at the bridge, trying to knock it out. But it was too late. We had a foothold, and that foothold grew into a stranglehold. I remember seeing a jeep come across later the next day. Rumor was Patton was in it. I didn't see him close up, but the guy said he stopped in the middle of the bridge and did exactly what he said he'd do. He relieved himself right into the Rhine. A message to the Germans, and maybe a message to Montgomery too. But here's the part that haunts me. It's not the crossing itself. It's what happened a few days later. We were moving through a small village. The resistance was light, mostly old men and young boys. The Volkssturm, they called them. Hitler's last-ditch effort. We were clearing houses. It's ugly work. You kick a door, you throw a grenade, you spray the room. You don't ask who's inside until after the dust settles. We came to a farmhouse at the edge of town. It looked empty. Windows were dark, no movement. But you never assume. I was on point. I went to the back door. It was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly. The smell hit me, stale cabbage and fear. I stepped into the kitchen. There was a noise from the cellar, a scraping sound. I signaled to Miller. He came up behind me. We moved to the cellar door. I yelled out, "Kommen Sie raus! Come out!" Silence. Then a voice, a woman's voice, crying. We went down. It wasn't soldiers. It was a family, a mother, a grandmother, and 3 kids. They were huddled in the corner, terrified. They thought we were monsters. The propaganda told them Americans would kill them all. I lowered my rifle. "It's okay," I said, though I didn't know if they understood. I motioned for them to come up. They were starving. We had chocolate bars in our pockets, D-rations, hard as bricks, but calories. I gave one to the smallest kid. He looked at it like it was gold. We left them there and moved on. But as we were leaving the village, a mortar shell hit that farmhouse. I saw it happen. 1 minute the roof was there, the next it was a cloud of dust and splinters. It was a stray round. Maybe ours, maybe theirs. I don't know. I ran back. I tried to dig through the rubble. I tried to find them. Miller pulled me away. "They're gone, Henry," he said. "We have to move." I think about that reckless crossing. I think about Montgomery calling it dangerous. And I think about the speed of it. If we had been slower, if we had bombarded the area for days like Montgomery wanted, that village would have been flattened before we ever got there. That family would have been dead days earlier. Or maybe they would have fled. Maybe the delay would have saved them. You play these games in your head. You move the pieces around. If Patton waits, does the war last 6 months longer? Do thousands more die in the camps? Do thousands more GIs die trying to cross a fortified river? Probably. Speed saves lives in the big picture. But in the small picture, in the picture of that one farmhouse, chaos is just chaos. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. We kept moving. Patton didn't let us stop. The reckless crossing turned into a race across Germany. We were covering ground so fast the maps couldn't keep up. We were outrunning our own supply lines. Sometimes we had to siphon gas from abandoned German trucks just to keep the jeeps moving. We were tired, dirty, and running on pure adrenaline. But there was a feeling among us that the end was near. You could sense the collapse. The German soldiers we captured weren't the arrogant supermen we'd fought in Normandy. They were ragged. They were exhausted. They just wanted it to be over. I remember one night we were bivouacked in a field. It was raining again. It always rained. I was sitting under a poncho trying to keep my rifle dry. A lieutenant came by and sat down. He wasn't much older than me, maybe 22. He looked like an old man. "You know," he said, staring into the dark, "I heard on the radio that the British finally crossed the Rhine today. This was days after we had done it. They fired over 1 million shells," he said. "They dropped 2 airborne divisions. It was the biggest show on earth." He laughed, a dry, cracking sound. "And we just paddled a canoe across." It made you feel proud in a twisted way. We were the mongrels. We were the ones who did the dirty work without the fanfare. But it also made you angry, because we knew that while Montgomery was planning his perfect battle, men were dying on other fronts. Every day the war continued was a day a mother lost a son. Patton understood that. He was a hard man. He was brutal. He slapped soldiers who broke down. He had an ego the size of a tank, but he understood that time was blood. He understood that a reckless decision that ends the war one day sooner is better than a safe decision that lets it drag on. We pushed deeper. The towns started blending together. Frankfurt, Kassel, Erfurt. The resistance was sporadic. Sometimes a sniper would take a shot. Sometimes a Panzerfaust would fly out of an alley and take out a jeep. But mostly, it was just a sea of white flags. Sheets hanging from windows, pillowcases, anything white. The people were done. But the war wasn't done with us. Not yet. We were getting close to something bad. We didn't know what it was, but we could smell it, literally. The wind changed one day, and it carried a scent that was worse than the river, worse than the battlefield. It smelled like burning, like death on an industrial scale. We thought it was a chemical plant or a factory. We were wrong. We came across a camp. I won't say the name. You know the names. There were many of them. This was a smaller one, a satellite camp. The gates were open. The guards had fled hours before we arrived. I walked through those gates and the world tilted on its axis. I had seen dead men. I had seen bodies torn apart by artillery, but I had never seen skeletons breathing. I had never seen piles of human beings stacked like firewood. I stood there, a 19-year-old boy from a small town where the biggest tragedy was a barn fire, and I looked at the face of evil, real evil. Not the cartoon evil in the newsreels. This was cold, calculated, mechanized destruction. A man in a striped uniform, no more than skin and bones, walked up to me. He didn't speak. He just reached out and touched the sleeve of my jacket. He wanted to see if I was real. I froze. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to give him food, but the medic screamed at us, "Don't feed them solid food, you'll kill them." Their stomachs couldn't handle it. So I just stood there, tears streaming down my face, letting this man hold onto my sleeve. That was the moment I understood why Patton drove us so hard, why the reckless crossing mattered. Every hour we wasted, every hour we spent waiting for the perfect plan, people like this man were dying. If we had waited for Montgomery's timeline, if we had taken another week to prepare, how many more would have been thrown onto those piles? The political arguments, the generals bickering over credit, the strategic debates, it all faded away in that camp. All that mattered was that we were there. We had arrived. Maybe we were reckless. Maybe we were lucky. But we were there. After the war, I went back home. I got a job at the mill. I married my sweetheart. I had kids. I tried to live a normal life. But you don't really come back from that. Part of you stays there. Part of you stays on that dark river, paddling into the unknown. Part of you stays in that cellar with the family that disappeared. Part of you stays at the gate of that camp. I watched the documentaries over the years. I saw the historians criticize Patton for overextending, for taking risks. I saw them praise Montgomery for his caution, and I just shake my head. They weren't there. They didn't feel the clock ticking. They didn't feel the weight of the days. I'm 92 now. Most of the guys are gone. Miller died 10 years ago. Heart attack. He never learned to swim. Can you believe that? We used to joke about it, but he made it across the Rhine. We all did. I tell this story not because I want to be a hero. There are no heroes in war, only survivors. I tell it because I want you to understand that sometimes the safe path is the wrong path. Sometimes you have to get in the boat. You have to push off into the dark water, even when you can't see the other side. Even when people tell you it's reckless, because there are things on the other side that can't wait. There was a letter I found once, in a box of my old stuff. It was from my mother. She wrote it in April of 1945. She said, "Henry, the papers say the war is almost over. Please be careful. Don't take any chances." I laughed when I read it. Mothers always say that. Don't take chances. But if we hadn't taken that chance at Oppenheim, if we hadn't crossed that river when we did, I don't know if I'd be here. I don't know if the world would be the same. The crossing at Oppenheim was a secret for about a day. Then the world knew. But for that one night, it was just us. Just the sound of the water and the beating of our hearts. I can still hear it. The splash of the paddle, the crunch of the gravel, the silence before the storm. I wonder sometimes what Montgomery really said to Eisenhower when he found out. I bet he was furious. I bet he felt upstaged. But I also bet deep down he knew. He knew that war isn't about plans. It's about seizing the moment. And nobody seized a moment like Georgie Patton. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. It's getting late now. The shadows are getting long in my room. It reminds me of that evening on the bank, the light fading, the uncertainty rising. But I'm not afraid anymore. I've lived a long life. I've seen the best of men and the worst of men. And I know that when the time comes to cross that final river, I won't hesitate. I'll just get in the boat and paddle. Thank you for listening to an old man ramble. It helps to get it out. It helps to know that someone else knows about the cold water and the dark night. Keep these stories. Share them. Because once we're gone, the only thing left is the history books. And the history books don't have the smell of the river. They don't have the shaking hands. They don't have the truth. Only we do. And now you do too. Take care of yourselves. And remember, sometimes you have to move before you're ready. Sometimes you have to cross the river in the dark. This is Henry Lawson signing off. I turned the recorder off for a minute. I sat here in the dark, listening to the clock on the wall tick. Tick, tick, tick. It sounds just like the timer on a demolition charge we used to set. Funny how sounds trigger you, even after a lifetime of peace. I thought I was done for the night. I thought I'd said enough about the river and the camps. But the memories don't work like a faucet. You can't just turn them off. Once they start flowing, they flood the basement. And there's one story, one specific face, that I haven't touched on yet. It's the reason I wanted to make this recording in the first place. I talked about Patton and I talked about the big movements, but the war wasn't fought by generals on maps. It was fought by scared kids in the woods. And what happened in those woods outside of a town called Siegen about a week after we crossed the Rhine is something I've never told anyone. Not even my wife, God rest her soul. She wouldn't have understood. She would have asked why. And I never had a good answer for why until recently. We were pushing into the Ruhr pocket. That was the industrial heart of Germany. It was a mess of factories, coal mines, and dense forests. The Germans were trapped there, hundreds of thousands of them. General Model, their commander, was in there somewhere. We knew they were desperate. A desperate animal is the most dangerous kind. You corner a rat, it bites. You corner an army, it fights with everything it has left. We were moving through a thick forest. It was springtime, April 1945. The trees were greening up. There were wildflowers on the forest floor. It was beautiful. That's the cruel joke of war. You're walking through a postcard scene, smelling pine needles and damp earth, and you're looking for a man who wants to put a bullet in your chest. The cognitive dissonance is enough to drive you crazy. You see a bird flying, free as can be, and you're stuck in the mud, hugging a rifle, wondering if you'll see the sun go down. I was on point again. I seemed to always be on point. Maybe because I had good eyes, or maybe because the sergeant didn't like me. I don't know. I was about 50 yards ahead of the platoon. The woods were quiet, too quiet. No birds singing. That's always the tell. When the birds stop, something is wrong. I crept forward, stepping heel to toe, rolling my weight so I wouldn't snap a twig. We had been taught that back in basic, but out here, it was instinct. A snapped twig could mean a mortar round landing on your head in 30 seconds. I came to a small clearing. There was a stream cutting through it, bubbling over rocks, and there, kneeling by the water, was a German soldier. He wasn't an SS stormtrooper. He wasn't one of those giants you see in the propaganda films. He was a kid. He looked younger than me, and I was only 19. He had his helmet off. His tunic was unbuttoned. He was splashing water on his face. His rifle, a Mauser Kar 98K, was leaning against a tree about 5 feet away from him. I froze behind a large oak. I had him dead to rights. I raised my M1 Garand. I settled the front sight post right on his back, just between the shoulder blades. It was an easy shot, less than 30 yards. I took a breath. I started to squeeze the trigger. This was the job. This was what they trained us to do. See the enemy, kill the enemy. Simple. But I didn't fire. I don't know why. Maybe it was because his back was turned. It felt wrong, like shooting a deer at a salt lick. It wasn't combat, it was execution. I lowered the rifle slightly. I stepped out from behind the tree. My boot crunched on dry leaves. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. The kid spun around. His eyes went wide. I've never seen fear like that. It wasn't just fear of death. It was the fear of a child caught doing something wrong. He scrambled for his rifle. I snapped my M1 back up. "Don't," I yelled. "Nicht schießen." That was one of the few German phrases I knew. Don't shoot. He froze. His hand was inches from the Mauser. We stared at each other. He was blond, blue-eyed, dirt smeared on his cheeks. He was shaking, visibly shaking. I could see his chest heaving. I could see the terror in his eyes. And I saw something else. I saw exhaustion. The same exhaustion I felt in my own bones. We were two boys, thousands of miles from home, standing in a German forest, deciding whether to end each other's universe. I knew my platoon was behind me. If I fired, they'd come running. If he fired, even if he missed, the whole forest would light up. I motioned with the barrel of my gun. "Leave it," I said. "Leave the gun." He didn't understand the words, but he understood the gesture. He slowly pulled his hand back. He raised his hands in the air. I should have marched him back. I should have taken him prisoner. He would have been another tally mark for the intelligence officer, another mouth to feed in the POW cages. But looking at him, I realized he was done. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He was just a lost kid. His uniform was too big for him. His boots were worn through. I did something stupid, something treasonous technically. I looked over my shoulder to make sure no one was coming. Then I looked back at him. I waved my hand towards the east, deeper into the woods, away from my unit. "Go," I whispered. "Rouse, go home." He looked at me, confused. He thought it was a trick. He thought I was going to shoot him in the back as he ran. That's what they were told we did. I lowered my rifle completely. I took a step back. "Go!" I hissed, louder this time. "Mama, go to Mama." He understood that. Mama, the universal word. Tears welled up in his eyes. He nodded, a jerky, frantic nod. He didn't grab his rifle. He just turned and sprinted into the trees. He ran like a deer. I watched him disappear into the green shadows. I stood there for a long time, my heart hammering against my ribs. I looked at his Mauser leaning against the tree. I walked over and picked it up. It was heavy, beautifully made. I opened the bolt and ejected the cartridge. I threw the bolt into the stream. I smashed the stock against the tree until it cracked. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I told my sergeant I found the rifle abandoned. "Must have heard us coming and ran," I lied. The sergeant spat a stream of tobacco juice on the ground. Cowards, he grunted. They're all running now. I didn't say anything. I just felt a strange mixture of relief and guilt. Had I done the right thing? Or had I just let an enemy soldier go who might kill one of my buddies tomorrow? That thought haunted me. Every time we got into a firefight after that, every time a bullet whizzed past my ear, I wondered, was it him? Did I let the guy go who's trying to kill me now? That guilt is a heavy thing to carry. It's heavier than the pack. It sits in your gut and rots. You tell yourself you showed mercy. You tell yourself you kept a shred of humanity. But war doesn't reward humanity. It punishes it. A few days later, we were in a town called Siegen. We were clearing buildings again, street by street, house by house. It was brutal, close quarters stuff. We were taking fire from a church tower, a sniper. He had us pinned down in a courtyard. 2 of our guys were hit, screaming in the middle of the street. We couldn't get to them. The sniper was good. He was picking us off anytime we moved. I was huddled behind a stone wall, listening to the bullets chip away the rock above my head. I was terrified, and I was angry. I was angry at the sniper, angry at the war, angry at myself. Was this sniper the kid I let go? Was this my payment for mercy? I peered around the corner. I saw the muzzle flash in the bell tower. I raised my rifle. I didn't have a clear shot. We needed a bazooka or a tank, but we were alone. Then, something strange happened. The firing from the tower stopped. Just stopped. We waited. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, nothing. The screaming of the wounded men was the only sound. Finally, the lieutenant gave the order. Move up! Go, go, go! We sprinted across the street, dragging the wounded into an alley. I was part of the team that kicked in the church doors. We ran up the spiral staircase, boots clanging on the stone steps, ready to blast whoever was up there. We got to the bell tower. There was no one there, just a pile of brass casings on the floor and a half-eaten loaf of black bread. The sniper had vanished. We looked out the openings. You could see the whole town from there. It was a perfect killing nest. Why did he leave? He had plenty of ammo. He had the high ground. He could have held us off for hours, killed half a dozen more of us. But he just left. I walked over to the ledge. Scratched into the stone, fresh and white against the gray dust, was a symbol. It wasn't a swastika. It wasn't a rune. It was a crude drawing, a stick figure of a soldier. And next to it, a word scratched in English. Badly spelled, but readable. THANKS. I stared at it. My throat went dry. It couldn't be. It was impossible. The odds were astronomical, but I ran my finger over the scratch. It was real. Had the kid I let go in the woods circled back? Had he found a rifle and joined the fight, only to realize who we were? Or was it just a coincidence? A message from some other German soldier to some other GI who had shown him mercy? I'll never know for sure. But in that moment, standing in that bell tower with the smell of cordite in the air, I felt a weight lift off my chest. Maybe mercy does loop back around. Maybe, just maybe, the universe keeps score in ways we don't understand. We pushed on. The Ruhr pocket collapsed. We took over 300,000 prisoners. The roads were clogged with them. A sea of field gray uniforms. It was a pathetic sight. Men with hollow cheeks, shuffling along, heads down. No more goose-stepping. No more master race. Just defeated men wanting to go home. We had to guard them in these massive open fields. We didn't have enough barbed wire. We just had them sit in groups of 1,000. At night they would sing low, mournful songs, folk songs, not marching songs. It was eerie. Thousands of voices rising up into the spring night. It sounded like a funeral dirge for a nation. I remember walking the perimeter one night. A prisoner called out to me. Camel? Camel? He was asking for a cigarette. Camels were the brand. I had a pack. I walked over to the imaginary line that separated us. He was an older man, maybe 50. He had a bandage wrapped around his head, stained dark. I lit a cigarette and tossed it to him. He caught it with trembling hands. Danke, he whispered. He took a drag and closed his eyes like it was the best thing he'd ever tasted. American? He asked. I nodded. Yes. He looked at me. War is kaput? He asked. Yes, I said. Almost kaput. Good, he said. He nodded slowly. Dead. Russia. He pointed east. My other son. Dead. Normandy. He pointed west. He shrugged. Here. It broke you down hearing that. You spent months hating these people, fearing them, wanting to kill them. And then you talk to them, and they're just fathers who lost their sons. They're just men who got caught in the gears of a machine they couldn't stop. I'm not making excuses for the Nazis. I saw the camps. I saw what they did. That evil is real, and it's unforgivable. But the common soldier, the guy in the foxhole, he was just as trapped as we were. We moved south after the Ruhr, down into Bavaria. Patton wanted to get to the Alpine Redoubt. Intelligence said the Nazis were planning a last stand in the mountains. They said they had underground fortresses, super weapons, werewolves. It turned out to be mostly a myth, but we didn't know that. We were expecting the hardest fight of the war. The terrain got rugged. The Alps rose up like a wall of jagged teeth. It was breathtaking country. Snow-capped peaks, green valleys, little chalets with flower boxes. It looked like a fairy tale. But the roads were mined. The bridges were blown. Every tunnel was a potential trap. I remember driving a jeep through a mountain pass. The road was narrow, a sheer drop on one side. We came around a bend and there was a roadblock. Logs piled across the road. We slammed on the brakes. Suddenly, machine gun fire erupted from the cliffs above. They had us in a kill zone. We bailed out of the jeep, scrambling for cover behind the rocks. Bullets sparked off the pavement. The jeep caught fire. We were pinned. "Radio!" the lieutenant screamed. "Get air support!" But the radio was in the burning jeep. We were on our own. I was huddled behind a boulder with Miller. "This is it," Miller said. He was pale. "We're gonna die on this mountain." I slapped his helmet. "Shut up," I said. "Look for the flash." "Where are they shooting from?" We scanned the cliffs. It was hard to see anything in the glare of the sun off the snow. Then I saw it. A dark slit in the rock face about 300 yards up. A bunker. I pointed it out. "There, 10 o'clock high." The lieutenant looked. "Too far for grenades," he said. "We need to flank them." "I'll go," I said. I don't know why I said it. Maybe I was just tired of being pinned down. Maybe I wanted to get it over with. "I can climb up that ravine on the right. Get above them." The lieutenant looked at me. "It's steep, Lawson." "I grew up climbing apple trees," I said. "I can make it." He nodded. "Go. Take Miller." Miller looked at me like I was crazy, but he followed. We crawled to the edge of the road and dropped into the ravine. It was icy, filled with loose shale. We scrambled up, hand over hand, gasping for air. The altitude was getting to us. My lungs burned. Above us, the machine gun kept hammering away at the rest of the squad. We had to move fast. If they spotted us, we were dead. We'd be sliding down that mountain like rag dolls. We climbed for 20 minutes. It felt like 20 years. Finally, we reached a ledge above the bunker. We were looking down on the concrete roof. I could hear the Germans talking inside. They were shouting, reloading. I pulled the pin on a grenade. I looked at Miller. He pulled one too. I held up 3 fingers. 1, 2, 3. We dropped the grenades right in front of the firing slit. The explosion was muffled, a dull thud that shook the ground under our feet. Dust and smoke poured out of the slit. The machine gun stopped. We waited. Silence. We slid down the slope to the bunker entrance. We went in, weapons ready. It was over. 4 men inside, none of them moving. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt sick. The smell of high explosives in a confined space is distinct. It smells like sulfur and copper. We waved to the guys down on the road. They cheered. But up there on that ledge, looking at the bodies, I saw a photograph sticking out of one of the soldiers' pockets. I bent down and picked it up. It was a picture of a girl. She was smiling, standing in front of a mountain that looked just like the one we were on. On the back, written in cursive, "Waiting for you, love Helga." I put the photo back in his pocket. I didn't want it. I didn't want to know his name. I didn't want to know about Helga. I just wanted to go home. I wanted to forget that I had just killed a man who had someone waiting for him. That's the part they don't tell you in the movies. The killing isn't the hard part. The hard part is realizing that you just destroyed a whole world. That man was the center of someone's universe, and I just snuffed it out with a piece of metal and some explosive powder. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. We kept moving south, the war was winding down, but people were still dying every day. That's the tragedy of the last weeks. You know it's over, they know it's over. But the machinery keeps grinding. We reached the Danube River, another river. Not as scary as the Rhine, but still a hurdle. The bridges were down again. We had to wait for the engineers. While we waited, we found a warehouse full of wine, thousands of bottles, vintage French wine, looted by the Nazis. For one night, the war stopped. We drank like kings. We drank out of mess tin cups, out of helmets, out of the bottles. We laughed, we sang. For a few hours we weren't soldiers, we were just boys on a tear. I remember Miller dancing on a table singing Yankee Doodle Dandy at the top of his lungs. We were drunk on wine and survival. We were alive. We had made it this far. The end was in sight. But the hangover the next morning was brutal, and the reality of the war came crashing back. We got orders to move to a concentration camp called Dachau. We didn't know what it was. The name meant nothing to us. We thought it was a POW camp. We arrived there on April 29th. I will never forget the date. It is burned into my brain. The things I saw at the first camp I mentioned, they were bad. But Dachau was hell on earth. It was the epicenter. We saw the train cars first, open boxcars on a siding outside the camp. They were full of bodies, hundreds of them, men, women, starved, shot, beaten. I vomited. I just leaned over and dry heaved until my ribs hurt. I couldn't process it. My brain refused to accept that human beings could do this to other human beings. We went into the camp. The prisoners, the survivors, were cheering. They were rushing the fences, but they looked like ghosts. Their eyes were huge in their skeletal faces. Some of them collapsed and died right there, from the excitement. They died in the moment of their liberation. There was a rage that took over us, a cold, black rage. We saw the SS guards. Some of them had tried to surrender. Some were trying to blend in with the prisoners. It didn't work. The prisoners pointed them out. I saw GIs, good men, men who went to church on Sundays, men who wrote letters to their mothers. I saw them lose their minds. I saw them line up SS guards against a wall. I saw the machine guns set up. I turned away. I couldn't watch. I heard the shots, a long burst, then silence. I didn't stop it. I didn't try to intervene. Did they deserve it? Yes. God help me, yes, they did. After what they did to those people in the boxcars, they deserved worse. But it changed us. It stained us. We became executioners. We crossed a line that day. When you see absolute evil, you react with absolute violence. There is no courtroom in a place like Dachau. There is only raw, bleeding justice. I walked through the barracks. The smell was indescribable. It was a physical weight. I saw bunks stacked 3 high, with 4 men to a bunk. I saw the crematoriums. The ovens were still warm. There were piles of clothes, piles of shoes, piles of glasses, piles of gold teeth. It was an industry, a factory of death. I sat down on a bench outside the administration building and I cried. I cried for the first time in the war. I didn't cry when my friends died. I didn't cry when I was scared, but I cried there. I cried because I was ashamed to be a human being. I was ashamed to belong to the same species as the monsters who built this place. A prisoner sat down next to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. He was comforting me. Can you imagine that? He had been through hell, lost everything, and he was comforting the soldier with the gun. He said something in Yiddish. I didn't understand it, but the tone was soft. He pointed to the sky. It was blue. The sun was shining. He pointed to a tree outside the fence. It had new leaves. He was telling me that the world was still there, that life goes on. That man saved me. He pulled me back from the edge of the abyss. If he hadn't sat down, if he hadn't shown me that spark of humanity, I think I would have lost my mind that day. The war ended a week later, May 8th, VE Day. We were in Austria. The news came over the radio. The war is over. Germany has surrendered. We didn't cheer. We didn't jump up and down. We just sat there. We were too tired to cheer. We opened some rations. We smoked cigarettes. Someone said, "Well, that's that." It felt anticlimactic. We expected a marching band. We expected fireworks. Instead, we just had silence. The guns stopped. That was the loudest sound of all, the absence of noise. For the first time in a year, I could hear the wind in the grass without wondering if it was a tank. I could hear a plane overhead without diving for a ditch. Going home was strange. The boat ride back was long. We played cards. We slept. But we didn't talk much about what we saw. What was there to say? How do you explain Dachau to someone who hasn't seen it? How do you explain the smell of the Rhine? How do you explain the look in the eyes of the boy you didn't shoot? When I got off the train in my hometown, my parents were there. My girl was there. They hugged me. They cried. They told me I looked thin. They told me I looked older. They didn't know the half of it. I was 100 years old. I walked through the town I grew up in, and it looked like a toy village. Everything was so small, so clean, so unbroken. It felt fake. I felt like a stranger in my own life. It took years to feel normal again. The nightmares were bad for a long time. I'd wake up sweating, reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. My wife was patient. She would hold me until the shaking stopped. She never pushed. She never asked for the details. She just anchored me. I never saw that German soldier again, the one in the woods. But 50 years later, in 1995, I was at a reunion in Germany, a veterans reunion. Former enemies meeting as old men. It was a strange affair. We drank beer. We shook hands. We tried to bridge the gap. I was sitting at a table alone, watching the crowd. An old man walked up to me. He was tall, thin, with white hair. He had a cane. He looked at me for a long time. Then he pointed to his own chest. "Siegen," he said. "The woods, near the stream." My heart stopped. I looked at his eyes, blue eyes. Old now, surrounded by wrinkles, but I knew them. It was him. It was the boy. He didn't speak much English. I didn't speak much German, but we didn't need words. He pulled out a wallet. He showed me a picture, a black and white photo of a family. Him, a wife, 3 children, grandchildren. He pointed to the picture, then pointed to me. "Because of you," he said. "Leben, life." He started to cry. I stood up and hugged him. We stood there in the middle of that beer hall, 2 old soldiers, holding on to each other and weeping. The man I almost killed. The man who almost killed me. We were both alive. We both had families. We both had lived full lives because of one split-second decision in a forest in 1945. That's the lesson, if there is one. The war is big. It's maps and generals and armies. But it's also small. It's one man deciding not to pull a trigger. It's one man sharing a cigarette. It's one man sitting on a bench in hell and offering comfort. Those small moments are what save us. They are the threads that hold the world together when everything else is tearing apart. I'm glad I told you this. It feels lighter now. The room doesn't feel so dark. The smell of the river is gone. I can just smell the rain outside. It's a good smell, clean. If you've listened this far, thank you. You've given an old man a gift. You've listened to his ghosts. And by listening, maybe you've helped put them to rest. Don't forget us. Don't forget the boys who didn't come back. Miller, the guys in the Jeep, the thousands in the cemeteries. And don't forget the ones who did come back, but left a piece of themselves over there. Be good to each other. Life is short and it's fragile. Don't wait to show mercy. Don't wait to forgive. Do it now, before the woods go quiet. This is Henry Lawson, over and out.